Hello, everyone. My name is Henry DeReyes, and I'm your host for the Strength Journey podcast. Our goal is to inspire everyone to become the best versions of themselves through exercise and self-improvement. We interview fitness experts to learn about their journeys and inspire everyone to include fitness into their daily lives. Today, I'm here with professional bodybuilder, social media influencer, and bodybuilding coach, Kyle Wilkes. Hey, Kyle, how are you?
Good, Henry. How are you?
I'm well. So Kyle, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, try to give you a quick synopsis. I started off, I guess when I was your age, I was just in the sports, never really lifted, trained, or did any of those cool things. In high school, we had like mandatory workouts for sports. I was a big basketball, baseball guy, never a participant to say the least. So the only lifting I did throughout my teenage years before I got to college, at least through my senior year, I would lift Xbox controllers and textbooks. So
Nice, yeah.
Nerd, I guess you could say. I really put my time into just educating myself based on what was being preached in school, as far as getting into the gym. When I had a chance, so you haven't got there yet, but when you have to decide whether you're going to go to college, things like that, I was faced with the reality that I wasn't going to be like a D1 athlete. So for me, it didn't make sense to go to like a Division 2 or 3 school to play a sport when I can get a good education. So I continued to pursue the educational route. Went to Rutgers University here in New Jersey.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Where I'm located. And from there, I just started to try to figure out what I can do with my own physique. I was always on the heavier side growing up. Again, I could have done some intramural sports, but for me, going to school, I guess you could say I had my group of friends, but we were all going to different schools. So I was kind of by myself, right? I had a random roommate that I met there, and he really helped propel me to get into lifting. I had just started the summer prior, didn't really know what I was doing, but he was pretty polished. He played football. He looked like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Well, didn't really try, let's just say, right? So decent genetics, but good work ethic. So we embarked on what was the beginning of, I didn't even know would be a fitness journey for me. It was just, I didn't want to play sports anymore because, again, I needed a team. So I love sports, still do to this day. I love watching them, baseball, basketball, but any sport, the common theme is you need a teammate or other people to play. You can go shoot basketball by yourself, but to actually play in a game requires other individuals. With bodybuilding and going to the gym, you just need yourself.
Yeah.
Right. That's the main thing is I wanted to find something that I didn't need to depend on anyone. And that's not to say that I don't believe in having teammates or anything like that. So that's really important to have a support system. But as far as the day in and day out, day-to-day things, it's just me showing up, my decision, what I want to eat, go to the gym on my convenience, things like that. So I just embarked on something that was always my weak character trait, I guess you could say. If I was building a character, played The Sims or any of these games that I might play growing up now, I was always heavy. Like I said, I wouldn't say heavy, but I wasn't in shape. I'd do the same things my friends did, participate in the same drills for the sports, but my eating wasn't the best and my genetics, I was just the heavier kid, man, So
yeah, same here,
Yeah, didn't have a six-pack or anything. So I said, okay, let me just try to put on some muscle. And so on. I think I graduated high school about 175, 180 pounds, like skinny fat. And then by my freshman year at college, I got up to like 230.
Dang.
Put on fat in the process. From there, going into my sophomore year, really started to push food. I just thought as long as I'm eating somewhat clean, it's okay. So I didn't do much cardio. I just trained really hard. And I would just eat everything. So I got up to like 250, 255. At this point, definitely a little chubby because, again, I started in not the most conditioned point.
Yeah.
From there, I wanted to try to do my first show, lost about 55, 60 pounds. And I did that in the beginning of the summer. So my goal was to do a show before I went back to school. And the semester starts in August. And I think I was like 4 weeks out. And the person that was kind of monitoring my diet at the time, we just agreed like, hey, like, you got a lot more to go, unfortunately. So I lost a ton of weight, ton of fat in the process, but I wasn't going to be able to step on stage in a respectable way, So from there, just went back into a bulking phase, got back up to 250, much better this time around.
That's good.
Finally, after my senior year, I was able to actually do a show for the first time. And that's where I guess my love for bodybuilding and fitness really went to another level. I've done with school in the professional world. So I worked in the professional world up until October of last year. So it's really only been about a year removed from the professional world. I had started coaching maybe 3 years after competing, taking on some local clients, a lot of my friends basically at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just really found it gratifying, and I found more satisfaction really in the client's development than in my own. So when they went on stage, I feel really good because I was able to help them. I can't obviously do the cardio or the training for them, but I feel I can lay the blueprint and just motivate them to really stick to something and to see the potential in themselves that they might not otherwise see unless they go through that process. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
that's kind of, I guess, the synopsis, right? And now, most recently, I quit my full-time corporate job and just kind of took the opportunity I have here to coach, where I enjoy it, right? So I kind of work for myself. I have a lot of flexibility to travel with different clients. I'm sure you know, many of the clients I have the opportunity to work with, or I'm getting the opportunity to work with. They're all bigger names of all ages. So, it's been paying off my time, to say the
Yeah.
least. It's, if I was your age and you had asked me, what I want to be when I grow up, this wasn't even something that would even be able to be as an option. It didn't exist because, the Instagram, the social media wasn't a thing. But even in college, when it became somewhat of a thing, I think I got Instagram like 2015, maybe. So at the time, Facebook and all of those things were already around, but I just never used it. Even social media now, I don't post very much. I was just never into that, right? Maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
confidence thing, most likely. But yeah, so by the time, I graduated college, to me, I didn't ever foresee not using my degree in my education because, again, 4 years prior, I made the decision to forego sports and to focus on education. So why would I throw that away? But again, eventually you have to realize life is short, right? So I don't want to ever get to the end of life and think of the things I didn't do. So to me, what is a career option A for most people in the finance world is now my B option. So if something didn't work out coaching or I got tired of it, I can always go right back,
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So I've noticed you've been posting since, I think I scrolled all the way down. It was 2015, which is crazy. And you were one of the first real bodybuilders and people like that to sort of start pushing it and talking about it on social media. So why did you start doing that? Like you said, you didn't, really like it. Like social media wasn't something you were immediately interested in.
I guess it was one of the few things I had going for me in terms of, I felt everyone at the time, kind of had, just like everyone has a cell phone nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back in my day, not too much older than you, but cell phones were just becoming like popular when I was like your age, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to high school, my parents are old school, so I didn't have a cell phone or anything. So when I finally got a cell phone, text messaging was like the new thing, kind of.
Yeah.
Internet was really slow. I had like Verizon VCast, if you even ever heard of that.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so that's how it was. There was no iPhones or anything like that. And then once I graduated, I guess I really got Instagram at first to stay in touch with people, other than just, messaging someone, hello, what's up? Or Facebook was kind of phasing out a little bit. And that was my way of like, this is what they've grown to know me as, a person that likes fitness and kind of going to the gym. So again, I think to date, I don't have any like selfies or anything on there. The only thing I post is things around the gym, and now basically always about clients. I don't really post too many personal things. But what made me do that again is just to kind of stay in touch with people, to be honest with you. And then I just felt that I can compose messages to motivate people in a way that I would want to be motivated. So sometimes when I try to share things, it's more coming from the person, what would help me if I was 10 years younger,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I also noticed one of the captions of a post you wrote, transformation isn't a future event, it's a present day activity. And I thought that was really moving. But can you explain this idea and how it's present in your daily life?
So that specific a quote or part of the caption, right? I guess, again, I look at it, life goes really fast, man, to say the least. So I don't know what number of podcasts this is, but hopefully whether you're successful or not, you'll look back and feel like you did this yesterday, and it'll be 5 years, then it'll be 10 years, you'll be out of school doing who knows what.
Yeah.
And I've realized that, how do people get to where they are doesn't just happen when you wake up tomorrow, right? It's a conscious decision that you're making today to either do something or not do something. So when that caption was composed, it's more so the realization that what you're trying to achieve, especially those longer term goals, they don't happen just overnight. They're repeated processes day in and day out, subconsciously, manifesting what it is you want to see and how you're going to get there. So the real thing is when people ask you about those 5-year plans, you should have a 5-year plan, and the realistic 5-year plans, because I'm a person where you don't want to set a goal that is very, very impossible to attain, right? And what I mean by that is there are some goals that you're not going to be able to attain until you're 30 years old, right? And that's just the nature of it. You're not going to have a kid tomorrow and have a son that's 15, right? It doesn't work like that. But those goals that are maybe somewhat slightly out of reach or are definitely going to be a stretch, work backwards. And how can you actually, if I place myself in that position and work backwards, is it realistic? And that's how I try to plan things. So the more I feel that you can kind of put yourself in those shoes and think of, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years? What can I do to get there? The more realistic of a possibility of that really come into fruition.
Yeah. So, 5-year plans are like really, especially for teenagers, that's kind of far out, that's like a huge leap into the distance. But what would the most important thing, I know consistency is obviously very important when it comes to lifting or really achieving any goal. But what would another factor be that you think is just as important as consistency, or maybe just a little bit less, but that someone needs to have in order to, see their goals in 5 years?
I think you need to be a little obsessed, right, with your goal. I would say obsessed and resilient. There's going to be a lot of people, usually your closest people to you, that will chirp in your ear and tell you that you can't attain something. And I'm not going to be cliche and say, anything's possible, because there are some things that aren't possible, right? There's a missing submarine. Those people are unfortunately no longer with us. We can't go back and change that, right? So that's not possible. But I believe, again, if you can couple being resilient with knowing what it is you want, working backwards, seeing it maybe on paper, seeing it in your head, and day in and day out making that conscious decision to do things, especially when it's things you don't want to do. There are a lot of things along the way that you'll talk to any successful person and ask them, hey, did you get here exactly how you wanted? Were there things you didn't want to do to get here? The answer is going to be profoundly, absolutely, 125%. There are things I hated to do that I had to do to get here, right? So whether that's working longer hours, making sacrifices and not participating in social events, anything, right? There's numerous things that might come to mind. That's going to be one facet. And then the other facet, again, is being obsessed. I think any successful athlete, who's your favorite athlete?
Right now, I'll say Jalen Hurts.
Okay, right. So with him, I think he has a plethora of quotes that he's spoken about, right? He's a very team-oriented player.
Yeah.
And the main thing there is he's realistic that no matter how good he is, he needs a team, right? So though he can always work on his own craft, ensuring that everyone has the belief in him, that he can see what the belief is for the entire team and he can make everyone else better, is what's going to set him apart from other quarterbacks, for example, right? As far as being obsessed, as I mentioned, so any of these athletes, some of them have good genetics. They might become in tune with certain responses that get them to a certain point faster than the other person. They don't have to practice as much. But the athletes that are exceptional and legendary athletes that come to mind, whether that's like a Kobe Bryant, a Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez,
MJ,
they didn't luckily get there. They put in a lot of time and they were just obsessed and anything that got in their way, they didn't pay attention to. They weren't afraid to say no because they knew what they wanted to do. There's a direct correlation to people getting up very early in the morning, working really hard and prioritizing what matters to them. As you start to get older, it's very easy to be a yes man and take on as much work as possible, do everything for other people. But at some point, you need to be selfish in your pursuit. That way, when you do get to the top, you can help everyone. And I'm not saying not to have friends along the way or to cut people off, but there are going to be a profound amount of people in your life that are going to do nothing but kind of be an obstacle. And it's up to you to identify, like, hey, this person is actually, they don't want to see me win. And you'll see that very often in life when you start to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people won't clap for you. They're not going to be in your corner because they didn't want you to succeed or be better than them. And a lot of people are like that, to where they want to see you do well. But when you start doing really well, you'll start to see a little resentment, perhaps. They're not the people you can really count on. And I'm not saying you have to get the rock bottom to see who's really there to stand by your side.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if people were able to get to rock bottom, they would learn quickly who's by their side, as opposed to many athletes, right? So they get to the top making tons of money. You might wonder, how on earth can they go bankrupt? It's not just personal spending habits. It's usually the people around them asking for things, them not knowing how to say no, right? And identifying that, hey, this person is actually not here for the right reasons. They don't want to see me win. They just want it to be convenient and take a seat on the bus, but they don't belong on the bus.
Mm-mm. Yeah. That makes so much sense, especially, once you start winning, people, will start like plotting your demise in a way, not really, but in a way.
For sure.
And I assume this happened to you in some stretch. How do you deal with like the hate that comes, from, you taking the different route, becoming like a self-made man, doing everything other people probably said you couldn't, how do you deal with that hate?
So I think it's just recognizing, right? You say self-made man. At the end of the day, there's been a lot of help along the way, right? So I want to take the time to recognize and appreciate that help I've gotten along the way, because it wasn't like I stayed under a rock and just popped out, right?
Yeah.
I learn and I kind of observe from afar. And as I like to tell people or clients, I can point out the landmines. People are still going to step on them, because sometimes you have to learn, right? Just like you're young, but eventually you'll have your first love. Most of the time, it doesn't work out. Does that mean you should never date? No. But sometimes you have to learn things on your own. It doesn't matter how I explain it to you, because you just have to go through it yourself. All I can do is prepare the people for those landmines that they might step on. And most of them sometimes purposely look at them and step on them, and then they learn. But as far as, so getting off that about the self-made man, dealing with the realization is that not everyone is going to like you. I know my pure intent at the end of the day, right? Do I know people that come to mind that probably will have something negative to say? Sure. But at the same time, I know confidently in most of those people, I could point out positive things that I've done with them, that we've shared experiences with. And at the end of the day, maybe something was misunderstood. Maybe communication could have been better. But if I hyper focus on that, I'm going to miss other opportunities. So, at the end of the day, I think, again, I always try to be a perfectionist. I wanted everyone to like me. I think that's what holds me back a little on social media. And then even in your shoes, right? If people might make fun of you, you're trying to do a podcast, you sent emails out, nobody answered but Kyle. Keep trying, right? It goes back to, the salesman, keep making the phone calls, cold calling, it's called, at least in the finance world, where you just keep calling and all it takes is one yes. And that can make the difference. So to me, all I can learn is, although I don't want people to hate me or not like me, it's bound to happen. Sometimes it's a jealousy thing. Sometimes it's just, we don't communicate very well, perhaps. But again, as long as I'm not trying to be malicious to anyone, as long as someone's being malicious, I don't really look into it too much, because again, it's expected that, there are plenty of people that I might have had a certain outlook on them and not thought about them. And it's just, sometimes people judge a book by its cover. So again, I can't interact with every fan or every client the same way. All I can do is, if I get an opportunity to sit down with someone in the room, I can do my best to give them the opportunity to learn me, make their own decision. If you're going to judge someone based off of the interactions of another human being, you're going to start to have problems in life, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great message. And that's a great lesson for everyone, to take in and learn. You can't worry about what other people think, because they're not the same as you. It doesn't work that way. And, you've clearly learned this through, your life and, through lifting in general, through what you've become. But can you tell me about another lesson you've learned that could be really important for teenagers when they're trying to get in shape?
When I was younger, growing up, things are a little bit different in terms of the abundant amount of information out there, right? So coming full circle to a thing you said in the beginning about the number of podcasts, there are things out there for certain demographics. I think the biggest lesson is, of a teenager trying to get in shape. It's realizing that there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
First and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what age you get to. But more importantly, you can't listen to everyone, right? You have to find one thing you're trying, to be patient. A lot of people see their favorite influencer doing an exercise. So, maybe they have a little regimen they want to follow. And before you know it, they make 7 to 10 days on the regimen. And then the following week, when it's time to train, perhaps for the second time through their workout split, they see someone else doing exercise. So they say, okay, I want to try this too. But when you start trying different things and you're always changing different things, listening to your friend who's getting double the results for whatever reason, you start to go in a circle and you spin your tires in the mud. So the best piece of advice is follow a plan, be diligent, right, with that plan, see it through for 8 to 12 weeks, and then make adjustments thereafter. If you go in there and are constantly changing things, this week you're benching 4 times, next week you bench 1 time, how can you ever track progress? You're at a teenager's age. I would say just being consistent and having fun is going to get you really far. No one at your age is too advanced in terms of development with the muscular. Like they don't have too much muscle. So there's no reason you have to target your lats or target your teres. Just target your back because you don't have one. Right. Once you get to that level that you have a lot of muscle and you can see like, okay, this person doesn't have adductors. Perhaps they don't do any movements that are a wide stance or targeting that inner thigh. Then you can make an adjustment. But until you get there, just focus on the basics. The basics are what are going to really build a good physique. And then by the time you're 18, 20, you'll start to see, okay, this is obviously not translating to a better physique. Let me try something different. But if you're always, again, changing things week in and week out, you're just going to go in circles and delay the inevitable, which is I'd have to be diligent and follow something for an extended period of time.
Yeah, that's really important. Like if you're bouncing around constantly from new things, whether it's lifting or whether it's in life, whatever it is, like, oh, I'm going to do this and then this and then this, like you won't get anywhere. There's no way you'll even see progress. So Kyle, how have your thoughts about lifting stayed the same throughout the years and how have they changed? Like sort of like training, like in general about fitness and also nutrition.
So as far as with training, it's changed immensely. I mean, more so in the last year since I've gotten hurt too. I have to physically adapt new style training, but I think I picked up on right away. There are a lot of, if someone has a genetic anomaly, they can lift any type of way and they're going to grow. They don't really focus on tempo or intensifiers such as drop sets or rest pauses. They just have to go to the gym, right? And they're going to get stronger. They're going to do the 10 reps of a bicep curl or a dumbbell curl, and they're going to get huge arms. You can't always, you have to take it with a grain of salt. So as far as when I first started coming up, I would pretty much try to, there's magazines really of like this person, Phil Heath's arm workout. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try this. And then the next week it was something different. So in the beginning I was bouncing around because I didn't know what worked. All I can read was this was the new person that was hot growing up. Kai Green was a big person growing up. Phil Heath were battling a lot when I first started getting into fitness. So it was like, okay, Jay Cutler's kind of on his downfall. He was still great, but in terms of like progressing year to year, he was no longer doing that. And then I just compared their style of training. And it was just like one person be very high volume. One person was more in tune with neurologic connecting, making sure mentally they're where they need to be. And then you have the old school Dorian Yates, who low volume, really high intensity. So all different ideas, right? So for me, it was more of, let me try one thing for a couple months, then try something else. As I've progressed in age and experience, you can say the one thing I paid most attention to is just because you're getting stronger, it doesn't mean you're growing more muscle. Your tendons can get stronger sometimes. And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no specific movement you have to do to build a certain body part. When you're young, I would do the bench, deadlift, squat. There's no reason you shouldn't, right? You shouldn't really have any injuries. If you're lifting appropriately, you'll put on a lot of size and have a good base to work off of. Once you start to get older, perhaps someone's not really built to barbell squat. And what I mean by that is you'll see powerlifters. There's a distinct difference between powerlifters and bodybuilders. Powerlifters worry about moving as much weight as they can from A to B, whereas bodybuilders, you want to make it as hard as possible with the target muscle from A to B. So that's something I adapted, not in the very beginning. I didn't know the difference. I thought if I got stronger every week, I get bigger. All that led to, I started getting some aches in my joints. When I'm younger, that's not always the best thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as training within the last 5 years, I really focus on the eccentric, really pausing in the hole. So what I mean by that is at the bottom of a leg press, bringing the weight to a dead stop, then pressing, as opposed to just being explosive. The explosiveness, like I said, for those genetic anomalies will usually work very well. But if I can see someone squat 500 pounds with like 3 to 4 second descents, us pause in the hole, I know that person's super strong.
Yeah.
And then again, bringing it full circle, going back to the fact that there's no specific exercise I think you have to do. If you're consistently getting stronger with squats and you can do 315, which would be a lot for your age, but if you can do 315 for 10 reps of squatting, and then you're doing 405 for 10 reps, and we look at your legs and they look virtually the same, do you really think the answer is 500 for 10 reps? Probably not. It's probably the way you're doing it, right? So let's identify perhaps the exercise is not really working for you. Maybe put it at the end of the workout, or maybe just abandon it altogether, right? So I think what's changed is the fact of the matter is I don't just focus on progression with weight. And I also realized progressive overload. So I was on that kick for a little while. I guess that became very popular in the industry, where you have a top set, a back off set. Again, that will work for many people up until a certain point. At the end of the day, bodybuilding isn't a strength contest. No one goes on stage and asks, hey man, what do you bench? Hey man, what do you squat? It's how you look. It's an illusion, right? That's all that matters, is the detail. So at some point you have to realize and not get too far away from the aspect of just bodybuilding, right? So volumizing a muscle is what's going to add the roundness to somebody, not just lifting heavy. Will that add dense muscle? If someone's gripping and ripping it from the floor, sure, they'll put on some muscle. But at some point, they're going to have to be specific with ensuring that they're squeezing the muscle. Are they missing something? If you just go to, once again, squat, for some people, they're built to squat. They can move a lot of weight, but their quads look small. A power lifter might squat 1,000 pounds, but the bodybuilder does 400 pounds really slow. The bodybuilder looks like their legs looks like they can move what the power lifter moves. So as I've learned and I adapted, I want to look like I can move the house. I don't want to actually move the house. But I'm not going to also negate the fact that I think those essential exercises of the squat, the bench, the deadlift at a young age does put you in a good position to have a good base and a good understanding of, is this working for me? Cool. If it's not working for me, let me kind of abandon it and be okay with that.
Yeah. When did you decide that bodybuilding was your route instead of powerlifting?
I guess growing up, I always watched WWE. At the time, it was called WWF, and those guys definitely used performance-enhancing drugs at the time. So you had the guys like The Rock or Brock Lesnar, or those kind of guys that you still probably remember their name. They were huge, man. They looked like bodybuilders, and they were kind of athletic. I liked that look better because, again, for me, I was the endomorph, right? I was kind of like chubby. I didn't have abs or anything, so I knew I'd be pretty strong, but I wanted to have the look. So I knew my route wasn't powerlifting. My route was more the bodybuilding.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on nutrition? Like, I know obviously as a teen, our metabolisms are much faster than, like a 30 or 40-year-old that's lifting. But what are your thoughts on it for teenagers? And then what are your thoughts on nutrition for adults?
So I would say for teenagers, as you mentioned, I can't really imagine many. I try to be realistic. Do I think kids could eat better? Sure. Do I think they should eat better in terms of timing their nutrients? No, be a kid, right? I think if I was obsessing over the things I obsess over now, I wouldn't be the same person, right? I'm not saying be who I was, where I didn't even care what I was eating, was whatever mom and dad put on the table. But I think as a kid, you have good quality protein powders you can get that are really good now. I don't know how the schools are with foods and things like that, but I would say, if a kid can eat 4 food meals a day, that would be really good. And most kids nowadays in America They probably eat like a crappy breakfast. Who knows what they eat at lunch? I used to just eat the snacks and then I have a dinner and that was it. So if you can eat a well-balanced breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then maybe have like a nice shake or something, I think that'll put you in a really good position. Oftentimes I see the young fat kid, and then I see the young skinny kid, both doing the same exercises. Maybe we look into how they're eating. Maybe it's kind of the same, right? So you just have to realize like, hey, this person has different genetics than this person. Does that mean they both can't be great? It doesn't mean that. One might have to work a little harder, right? What for the fat kid, I guess I had no problem putting on weight. Might not be the best weight, but the skinny kid has trouble putting on weight, whether it's good weight or not. They just have a hard time. They have to eat a lot. So in those cases, that's where you start to become more advanced and focus on different macronutrients. But ultimately, for a kid, I would just seek a breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe a shake. As you become an adult, as you become an athlete, then I think it's more important to try to realize, like, okay, how can I structure my diet based on the composition I'm at? What type of body type am I? How am I eating?
Yeah.
Do I need to perhaps only have carbs in that peri-workout window? Am I someone that can just eat a ton of food and I just burn right through it? I think that's the realization. And as a kid, you mentioned you have a faster metabolism. Other than aging and things slowing down, the reality is as a kid, you're always on go. Your body's growing. It needs the nutrients. It's using them. You're running around at recess, at gym. You're moving around. Once you become an adult and you're out of college, you just sit down. You commute. You sit at work from a 9 to 5 for the average person, and that's it. There's no activity anymore. So now, of course, those same calories are no longer going to be able to be sustained if they're not changing anything. You know what I'm saying? So you always want to make sure you have the demand for your body to need the food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are your thoughts on supplementations? Obviously, protein powder I think is really good, but also things like creatine and ashwagandha.
So I think in the main staples, if I was a kid growing up, right, I'd want a quality protein powder, so not like a gold standard whey product that has like whey concentrates like their number one ingredient. Ultimately, what that's going to do compared to the hydrolyzed whey isolate, one's going to send you to the bathroom, one's probably going to not do that, to say the least.
Yeah.
So a good quality powder is number one. Number two, I think the most researched supplement in the bodybuilding fitness industry is creatine monohydrate. It's proven to work. So would I put that in? Yeah, I'd put that in probably after the age of 16, 3 to 5 grams a day. I don't think that's going to hurt you as far as like cycling it and things like that. Again, you're going to get doctors that don't have any application to anything. So what I mean by that is they read a textbook. This is good. This is bad. There's no test done. But with creatine, again, there is test done. They show that it improves endurance and improves strength performance for athletes, making sure water intake is high and stuff like that. What becomes important. So I think those are the two essential vitamins I'd have in play. On top of that, as you start to get into, I guess, your young adult years, that's when maybe like a multivitamin or something is good. Natural test boosters are not needed. Obviously, your testosterone is going to be the highest until you're, maybe 25. It start to kind of go down. But you mentioned ashwagandha. That wasn't even my vocabulary until I was probably 22, 23, when I was just stressed and didn't sleep. I don't think that's needed as a kid. You should be, again,
I don't think it is
life
either.
should be fun. There is nothing for a kid that is as stressful than it is for an adult, because the responsibilities are different. You can virtually, for most people, again, some kids are unfortunately in tough situations, but for the average person, you have a home to go home to. You're going to have food that's there. You don't have to work to get your food. And even if you do, the responsibilities aren't the same as an adult that might have a young infant at home, have a significant other to take care of, or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I use Isopure whey protein. What are your thoughts on that exact type? Is it one of the worst ones, or what? What do you think?
Sure. What is that one?
Isopure.
Gray container.
Yeah, it's the big, gray container. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's like a vitamin shop carries it, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a clean protein. I honestly never used that one personally because when I was younger, I didn't have the money to really buy protein powder. So I bought
it's really expensive.
Yeah, and I didn't know any better. But again, once I started to look into the fact that I was always going to the bathroom, had loose stool, I started to realize that again, it's not, there's a cliche saying that you are what you eat. And that's really not true. You are what you can eat, assimilate, and absorb, right? So if you can't absorb the nutrients that you're putting in your body and you're just going to the bathroom, it doesn't really matter if you're eating clean because there's something wrong. So though I was choosing the protein powder instead of the Whopper Junior at Burger King, I was going to the bathroom a lot, right? So obviously I wasn't absorbing the protein in it. So again, paying attention to the fact of the matter is one is very expensive, one is not as expensive. Why do you think that is? Because obviously to produce it, one costs peanuts, one costs a little bit of money, right?
Yeah. And for many people, I know you're huge basically. Do you use steroids or performance enhancing drugs?
I have.
Yeah.
I have. As far as people, if you're asking me like what age someone should consider, I would say in a perfect world, over the age of 20 or 21 is when you should consider to perhaps use something like that. The reality, again, let's just be honest here. I'll have kids that are asking me questions at 15, 16. And it's just one, I try not to even touch on that topic with anyone that age because it's just going to get me in trouble. But again, I also try to point people in the right direction. Like, hey, man, how about you wait a couple of years? Like, I think there's things. Tell me how you're training. Tell me how you're eating. Optimize that first before you throw in something that's going to work. Ultimately, you're still in a growing phase. So I think it's really dangerous and stupid because it's not needed. And once you do decide to go that route, what I tell people, it's not something you do one time. I'd say 95% of people that take PEDs or super supplements, as I like to call them, they don't stop and they need them usually moving forward. Testosterone replacement therapy is very popular now, even for people, maybe your dad or you as you get older, if you never touch anything, but you do diet down, you might notice your testosterone has decreased by the age of 30, more so than your buddy. There's no reason for it. Sometimes it's genetics, and that's just the human evolution. So testosterone replacement therapy has become very popular because it's been shown, hey, if your test levels are at a certain level, you will feel much better with overall life. Your appetite will be better. Your mental health will be better. All of these natural things that come with those young growing years when your testosterone is at a certain level before it starts to decline. So the reality is once you start to take testosterone, if you take it at 16, 18, 20, 22, all you're doing is setting yourself up to definitely need testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's stupid for someone young to take it, like my age, younger, or even like, even you're right, you said like below 20. It's completely unneeded, and it'll just make things harder for you later when you can get, obviously you won't get the same gains, but you can still get a whole lot, especially when you're growing.
If you can learn to if you can make, even when I get a lot of clients now, whether the perfect client I get is someone that is not really on anything or maybe on a very low dose because they've been using something. Ultimately, if their goal is to lose fat or build muscle, I always say, hey, let's keep you where you're at with this super subs, whether you're not using it or using very little dose, a TRT dose. And the reason for that is if we can't progress through nutrition and training to achieve our goal and move in the right direction, there's something wrong, whether that person's not listening. Maybe internally we need to get some more lab work done. Maybe something's wrong with their gut because the gut plays a huge role in essentially the entire mechanism of how bodybuilding works and building muscle and recovery and all of those things. But if you can't lose fat without a drug, there's a problem, right? There's something wrong. So if you can focus on training as best you can, as dieting as best you can, and then you put this in, at the end of the day, it's a PED, a performance enhancing drug. It is not a performance replacing drug. And a lot of people forget that. They say, oh, if I take this, I don't have to work as hard. People want shortcuts in life. That's the reality.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned, when you're getting really complex in training and you're adding like a tempo to it and doing whole sorts of different movements, when would you say someone should start considering that sort of high level training versus just sticking to a very basic routine? Because obviously basic routines should start, when your first couple of years, you shouldn't do anything. I mean, you don't need you'll get the same gains anyway. But when do you think one should start with the complex stuff?
I would say after like 2 years of true training. So assuming the person at least 16, right?
Yeah.
2 years of true training, I would start to focus on, again, I guess if I take a kid, 16-year-old kid, I'm going to teach them right away about tempo, because 99% of people that you'll see in your gym, if you look around, they don't focus on the eccentric at all. It's like a forgotten piece, a part of the movement. And it's almost equally or double important sometimes as concentric, to be honest, especially once you get past that level. Very easy to curl something, but controlling that same weight down, not so easy, right? That's where a lot
Yep.
of muscle fibers are getting tear in the eccentric portion. So you want to just focus a lot on your form, having the proper tempo. Once you just follow a general split, a few exercises, a few hard, learning to train to true failure. That's not necessarily saying you go until you can't move, right? It's more of until my form breaks. So if I take the first rep of an exercise and I have a 3-second descent and a 1 to 2 second concentric, if by rep 10, I have half a second descent, that I should be stopped.
Yeah.
The problem, there's something wrong, right? I'm able to keep going, but I've now failed at doing it the way I wanted to do it. So take those 2 years to really focus on getting good form, getting strong. Then from there, you can add in what I would say is more advanced, like a drop set, rest pauses, giant sets, stuff like that. So that would be like the best way the best advice I would give to someone that's young, not to overcomplicate it. Because also, once again, I touched on a little earlier in terms of not spinning your wheels and trying different things every week. If you're doing a drop set, let's just say, I don't know, you're squatting, okay? And let's just say you're doing 225 and you do 10 reps and you drop 10 reps and then you drop to one plate. How are you going to track that week to week, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you have a spotter, and maybe the spotter, maybe not so much on a squat, but on a bench press, you have a different buddy spotting you, and this buddy pushes you. Oh, get one more. And then they're ripping the weight off you. Can you really look at that and say, oh, I got stronger? Last week, this person helps you. They didn't really help you. This person ripped the weight off you. Did you get stronger, or is it the same? So it's very hard to gauge progress. So again, you want to eliminate all those variables. So if you're just doing straight sets, which is what I would call a set of 10, for example, a straight set, it's very easy to see, hey, I'm getting stronger, or hey, something's off. I'm kind of the same for week in, week out.
Yeah. But how'd you learn all this knowledge? Was it reading books or stuff online?
I've read books, and then just I watched a lot of videos, man, of different people training, seeing where they started, where they got to. Again, people only post. No one's going to post something on social media that they don't like. It's like a highlight reel. No one posts things they don't like. They always post something they like. That's just how the nature of the world works. Looking at people to see where they started and to seeing the progress they make year in and year out, that's what I kind of focus on. Looking at people who don't get hurt a lot, realizing, okay, there's a certain way of lifting to where, again, I can focus on just trying to get stronger. And then when I try that, perhaps my limb length, I have longer limbs. I'm a taller guy. So bench press for me, I'm never going to be someone that's benching 500 pounds. Does that mean I can't look like the guy's chest that benches 500 pounds? No, I'm just not going to, I can't chase weight. I have to chase quality contractions and how it feels. So again, just looking at different bodybuilders' ways of training, going through that trial and error, as I mentioned, for 8 to 12 weeks. Let me try hitting a body part once a week, like a bro split. Then for 8 to 12 weeks, let me try push-pull legs. For 8 to 12 weeks, let me focus on higher reps, seeing what really works well. And perhaps they all work pretty well at a young age, because they will. Because again, if you're doing that for 8 to 12 weeks, you are being, what I said earlier, consistent, right? Resilient to anything else. You're following the same program for 8 to 12 weeks. You don't care what your buddies are doing. You're doing your thing. If you can be that consistent, you're going to progress for sure at your age. There's no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What brought you the most joy on through lifting and your whole journey?
I would say the relationships I've been able to form with clients and seeing them happy, that brings me the most joy. Not so much the personal accolades or anything like that. Again, to me, I have an expectation that if I'm putting my time into something, I'll be pretty good at it. That's always just been my forte and thought process. I'm not going to pursue something and not be good at it. But what brings me the most joy is seeing someone start as like nothing and then turn into something really cool and really good. And to me, again, that's pretty impressive. That's what I like to see the most.
What's the hardest thing that you've done lifting, either mentally or physically?
I'd say mentally, probably going through a prep when I know I shouldn't be because I have a lot of other things going on in life. I would say that was very physically and mentally draining, so being able to push through that because I told myself I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was pretty challenging. The workouts, I love the hard workouts. I look forward to them when I'm in pain or struggling. I like that because at the end of the day, no matter how hard a set is, when it ends, it's over, right?
Yep.
You start to feel better. You don't get worse. When no one ever stopped the set and said, "Oh, I feel worse. Let me go back." Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that's like, it's a temporary thing. The longer I can feel in that state, the more sadistic I am. And I like it. Let me chase it like a shark seeing blood. Let me go after it. But yeah, I'd say that was the hardest thing. So the workouts, that's fun. I always tell people that get involved in fitness and bodybuilding, if you find the workouts to be tough and you're bored, you don't like them, bodybuilding is definitely not for you because the most boring thing in the world happens outside the gym when you're supposed to just eat the meals, can't participate in certain things sometimes, not because you don't want to, but maybe you're prepping and you don't have the energy. Maybe it's not the right place to put yourself in, right? You don't want to be a byproduct of a poor environment.
Yeah. So you talk about, prep and bodybuilding prep. And for teenagers that maybe are heavier and they want to lose weight, would you recommend cutting, or do you think that's not healthy when they're still growing?
I don't think it's too healthy when you're still growing. Now, I presume you don't mean morbidly obese, right?
No, not
Maybe
more. No,
someone
but
that looked
like a
like
little
me.
bit, like plumper. Like,
Yeah, so I'll take me. I was plumper.
yeah.
The only thing I would have did differently, other than trying to get stronger and put on muscle, I would have probably did some cardio. I didn't really believe in cardio in the beginning. I didn't think I needed it, but I was foolish. I didn't know any better.
Yeah. You refer to yourself and other people have called you Sir Kyle. Why'd you get the nickname?
I got it from Anthony Mantello, actually. So if you go back to his younger years at this point, so a few years ago, he just called me Sir a couple times. And I guess it just picked up in the comments. People started referring to me as that. And then, lo and behold, that's kind of what stuck.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Um, what's a big mistake that you see gym newbies making?
Not being consistent. Again, trying a certain workout one day, then doing something totally different the following week, kind of just, again, they're throwing paint at the wall, hoping it sticks. And again, just have some fun. Don't take it so serious.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a teenager who doesn't know where to start?
I would say if someone is in that position thinking that way, that's exactly where they're supposed to be because that's where it starts, not knowing where to go. It's the first thing that's needed to actually get somewhere in life, recognizing that, hey, I'm stuck or I don't know what I'm doing. From there, again, the internet has given us everything we could ever want and need. But unfortunately, sometimes if you're looking in the wrong place, you can get the wrong information. So the most important thing is be very selective with the information you're consuming. Don't listen to everyone. Be specific. Give it a try. Who I would go after, not being biased, are individuals that can have shown that they can walk the walk and perhaps have application. So they have examples of, hey, this is what I have this person do. This is how they do it. This is what has come about from that person. That is someone to look for when you're learning something. I think John Meadows, he passed away. I don't know if you ever heard of him. A very important person that has shined a great spotlight on the fitness community, shared valuable information. That's something to look into, read. He has different programs you can try, different exercise libraries that you can practice with. So getting started and looking, being selective with the information you're consuming is also important. Then from there, again, it's just being patient,
Yeah.
being okay, having a realistic goal. You don't need to lose 50 pounds of body fat. You don't need to step on a bodybuilding stage under 18. Just seek to be better than you were the day before. So every night you go to sleep, you can look in the mirror and you ask yourself, did I do everything I could today to be better? If the answer is yes, 350 days of the 365 in a year, I promise you look immensely different. But for the greater good of our population, they can't say that even 25% of the time. That's the difference. So
Yeah.
being patient, being really consistent, that's what's going to get you somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So lastly, what has working out done for you and your life? Like what doors has it opened and how has it made your life better?
So I think fitness has given me an opportunity to touch people's lives the way I think a human being should. So, and what I mean by that is, we often take for granted people like doctors that are performing surgeries that save someone's life. So growing up, I never really thought twice about being a doctor, but as I've aged, I look for those scenarios where I have friends that get sick or pass away sometimes, and I wish I could help them. Right. So that's why when I graduated a finance degree, I wanted to get as close to that as possible. Obviously, I can't be operating on somebody, but I could be controlling some finances and be in the medical field. So that's why I was in pharmaceuticals. That was as close as I could get to the end consumer in some shape or form to help somebody. Fitness has allowed me to be more in touch with the individual. I can help you, in my opinion, see things in yourself that you wouldn't have seen because maybe you didn't believe in yourself. So in fitness, and now the position that I'm in now as a coach, it's allowed me to be very personable with people, get to learn them, make them understand that, hey, perhaps I was in your shoes too, or hey, perhaps I have these 5 other people that were in your shoes, and where you are today is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Because you're meant to be there and you can get somewhere, and it's just small steps, right? So I would say if I didn't get involved in the fitness, a lot of the relationships I have now wouldn't exist. A lot of the cool adventures that I've been able to go on, that traveling wouldn't exist, because those are all things that I was very reserved growing up. I stayed in the same location, same friends. I guess you could say I was kind of introverted a little bit, and that was just me as a person. Fitness has allowed me to really get messages from people in different countries that I would never even thought of would consume any information that I share or reach out. So anytime someone reaches out, you send me an email, of course I'm going to respond back. I'll try to do so as fast as I can. Sometimes I get so many messages that I can't, but it's not because I don't want to respond. It'll never be because I don't want to respond. It is simply be because what I told you earlier, I have a hard time saying no. I always want to help somebody. And sometimes I can only help so many people,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kyle. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any advice for teenagers that you wish you had, or anything at all?
I guess the last piece of advice I would share will be to realize that you can truly achieve anything that it is you want, no matter what that may be. And the only person that's going to tell you no, other than yourself, are people that perhaps don't believe in you. And that's not me saying to have fantasies of things that are unachievable, but it's just who you think you can be, multiply that person by 10. Why can't you be that person? So if you're constantly chasing that person, and I think there's a good quote that I think everyone should know. And it was said, I think, during an Academy Award speech, and they had asked the individual, who is your hero? And the person said, it's myself 5 years from now. Because
I saw that too.
If you can look up to that person 5 years, by the time you get there, you're always chasing that person. So,
and you continue to get better.
Most important. Exactly. So I think as long as you're breathing, you have an opportunity to do right by yourself, to do right by the gift and opportunity you were given to live in the world we live in. Unfortunately, life is really short. People lose their lives that maybe shouldn't lose their lives. They don't get to choose that. So at least while I'm breathing and while you're breathing, you can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And as long as you're breathing every day, you have that opportunity until you don't.
Yes, sir. I love that. Where can viewers find you and follow you?
So you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is @Kyle.Wilkes. So they can message me there, or they can send me an email, which you can also get from my Instagram. So for simplistic purposes, just following me there would do the trick.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kyle, for coming out. I really love how you taught us to sort of be selfish and obsessed with a goal to really see the most growth. And I'm looking forward to next time. All right, that's all today from The Strength Journey. Stay safe, work out, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.